Okay, let's start. Number 1. The Dogon of Mali. You're in the Bandiagara escarpment of what is now Mali, West Africa, in 1931. The sandstone cliffs rise 500 feet around you. French anthropologist Marcel Graeul and his colleague Germain Dieterlen have traveled here to study the Dogon Khan, people, a community of roughly 400,000 living in cliff-face villages above the Niger River basin. What begins as a standard ethnographic survey becomes something else in the third year when the elders decide Graeul has earned enough trust to receive the knowledge they call the deep things. They tell him about the stars. The Dogon call Sirius the brightest star visible from Earth Sigitolo. But what they tell Graeul is not about Sigitolo. It is about what orbits it. They describe a companion star called Potolo, the smallest, heaviest object in existence, white in color, tracing an elliptical orbit around Sigitolo every 50 years. They describe the ellipse's shape. They draw it in the sand with a stick. The drawing matches the confirmed orbital path of Sirius B, the white dwarf companion to Sirius A. Here's what makes astronomers uncomfortable. Sirius B cannot be seen with the naked eye. It was inferred to exist by German mathematician Friedrich Bessel in 1844, based on the gravitational wobble it caused in Sirius A's path. It was photographed for the first time in 1862 by telescope maker Alvin Clark. Its nature as a white dwarf density so extreme that a teaspoon of its matter weighs approximately 15 tons was calculated in 1915 by British astrophysicist Arthur Eddington. The 50.1-year orbital period was confirmed mathematically in 1928. Graeul and Dieterlen arrived 3 years later and found a cliff village community in Mali that already had all of it. The Dogon also describe a third body, Mya Tolo, the star of women orbiting Sigitolo in the opposite direction on a longer cycle. Modern astrophysicists have debated a possible Sirius C for decades. In 1995, French researchers Daniel Benest and J.L. Devent published a paper in Astronomy and Astrophysics, arguing that perturbations in the Sirius system are consistent with a low-mass third companion. Its existence remains unconfirmed. The Dogon have been describing it for generations. Graeul and Dieterlen published their findings in the Journal of the Royal Anthropological Institute in 1950 in a paper titled A Sudanese Sirius System. It documents not just the astronomical knowledge, but the source the Dogon attribute it to. They say it came from beings called the Namo amphibious, fish-like entities who descended from the Sirius system in a vessel that landed in a whirlwind of wind and fire. The Namo brought civilization. Farming, weaving, metallurgy, and the astronomical record the Dogon maintain in ritual form to this day. British classicist Robert Temple spent years examining the skeptical counter-argument before publishing The Sirius Mystery in 1976. The counter-argument holds that the Dogon received this information from visiting European missionaries or traders who had read modern astronomy. Temple examined every documented point of contact between Western astronomers and Dogon communities before 1931. He found none that could account for the transmission of Sirius B's density, orbital shape, and 50-year period with the specificity the elders demonstrated. The hypothesis of contamination requires a contact that left no record and transmitted information with an accuracy most contemporary Europeans did not themselves possess. The Sieg ceremony encodes Potolo's elliptical orbit as a physical path traced through the village, walked on the same 50-year schedule the Dogon have always known. It is not metaphor. It is a specific ellipse, walked through specific geography, on a specific schedule, matching a specific measurement, confirmed by Western science in 1928. The elders drew the ellipse in the sand. They said it came from the Namo. The ellipse is correct, and the star it traces was invisible to every naked eye on Earth, until Alvin Clark aimed a telescope at it in 1862. Who told a cliff village community in Mali the orbital period of a star invisible to the naked eye? Why does the Sieg ceremony encode the correct shape of an ellipse not confirmed mathematically until 3 years before Graeul arrived? What are the Namo, and where did they go? Is the third star the Dogon describe already there, waiting for a telescope powerful enough to find it? And why has no institution followed up on the 1950 paper in the 75 years since it was published? The Sieg path runs through the village. The elders walk it on schedule. The star the Namo came from is still the brightest in the night sky. From Mali we travel northeast to the river valleys of Mesopotamia, were the civilization that invented writing left behind 130,000 clay tablets, describing, in administrative detail, the beings who descended from heaven to establish everything they knew. Number 2. The Ancient Sumerians. You're in the reading room of the British Museum in London in 1876. Assyriologist George Smith has just finished translating a clay tablet from the library of Assyrian king Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. The tablet contains the oldest flood narrative in human history, predating Genesis by 1,000 years. But that is not what concerns us here. The library Smith is drawing from contains 130,000 cuneiform records describing, in administrative detail, the beings who established Sumerian civilization. In Sumerian, they are the Anunnaki. In Akkadian, the root phrase "unna.kai" translates as those who from heaven to earth came. The Sumerian king list found at multiple sites across ancient Mesopotamia, dated to approximately 2100 BCE, opens with a single sentence. When kingship descended from heaven. Before listing the known historical rulers, it records 8 kings who ruled before the Great Flood. Their combined reign, 241,200 years. Alalim, the first, ruled 28,800 years. Alajar ruled 36,000. These are not metaphors. The same scribe who recorded these figures applied the same administrative precision to grain deliveries and labor hours. Before the flood, according to the oldest governmental record on Earth, the beings who ruled were not human. Here's what makes ancient linguists uncomfortable. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic found on 7 tablets at Nineveh, dated to approximately 1200 BCE, describes the formation of the solar system through celestial collision. A wandering body strikes a planetary object called Tiamat. One fragment becomes the asteroid belt, another becomes Earth. The moon is captured debris. The Anunnaki arrive afterward. Every major element of this account corresponds to the late heavy bombardment hypothesis, the scientific model for the early solar system's formation, first formally published in 2005. The Enuma Elish preceded it by 3,200 years. The city of Eridu, the oldest identified city on Earth, excavated at Tel Abu Sharain in southern Iraq, dated to approximately 5,400 BCE, sits atop 18 successive layers of earlier temples, each built on the ruins of the one before. Eridu appears in the archaeological record without developmental phases. No villages, no prototypes. The first level of Eridu is already a functioning urban religious center. The Sumerian texts are explicit about why. The Anunnaki founded it. After Anu, Enlil, Enki, and Ninhursag fashioned the black-headed people, they made vegetation grow from the earth. The sequence in the text. Beings arrive, found city, create labor force. The sequence in the archaeology. City appears, fully formed, with no precedent. The Meh, a Sumerian term for more than 100 divine properties, transmitted from the Anunnaki, to humanity reads as a transfer of civilization in list form. Kingship, weaponry, music, writing, metalworking, medicine, the calendar. The god Enki holds these properties physically as tablets and transmits them one by one to the first Sumerian city. These are not abstract virtues. They are technologies. And Sumer's record is explicit about the source. They came from beings who descended from above and delivered the contents of a civilization that already existed somewhere else. The god Adapa, the first human sage in Sumerian tradition, was created by Enki from clay, then brought before Anu in the sky and offered a choice between mortality and immortality. He accepted mortality, or had it chosen for him. The structure of being from above creating a human, the human brought to the sky for judgment. The decision that limits human lifespan predates Genesis by more than 2,000 years and contains the same elements with the same logic. The Sumerians did not borrow this from the Bible. The Bible borrowed it from Sumer. And Sumer says it came from the beings who descended from heaven. Where did the Anunnaki come from before they arrived at Eridu? Why does the oldest governmental record on Earth state that kingship descended from the sky before it existed on the ground? What are the 100-plus elements of civilization delivered as physical tablets and who assembled them before transmitting them down? What ruled Earth for 241,200 years before the flood? And why does no human biology support the lifespans the King List records without apology? The tablets are in London. The library that held them has been ash for 2,600 years. The first word of Sumerian kingship is still descended. From the river valleys of Mesopotamia, where the first written words record beings arriving from heaven before the flood, we cross the Atlantic to Mexico, where a stone tomb sealed for 1270 years holds a carved image that no archaeologist, historian, or engineer alive today has been able to fully explain, and where the texts name the same teacher, under a different title, whose function matches the Anunnaki exactly. Number 3. The Ancient Mayans. You're at the Temple of the Inscriptions in Palenque, Mexico, in June 1952. Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luillier has been clearing a hidden staircase since 1948, 4 years removing rubble from a passage sealed under 80 feet of pyramid. He pulls open the largest carved stone he has ever touched. The hinges are cut from the stone itself. Inside the burial chamber, lit by the first light it has received in 1270 years, lies a stone sarcophagus. Its lid is 12 feet long and 7 feet wide. Carved in detail, Ruz Luillier's notes describe as unlike anything previously documented in Maya archaeology. In 1968, Eric von Daniken published an analysis of the Palenque lid. The figure carved on it is a man. He is reclined in a seat, knees raised. His hands are on controls, one operating what appears to be a lever, the other adjusting a mechanism beside it. One foot rests on a pedal. At his nose is a device with tubes. Below him, extending in the direction of his feet, is a nozzle trailing fire and smoke. He is not falling. He is not praying. The posture is operational. Mainstream Maya scholars identify the figure as King Pakal descending into the underworld along the world tree. The interpretation fits the theology. It does not account for the mechanical specifics. No other Maya sarcophagus lid from any site shows a ruler in a reclined seat with hand controls and a foot pedal. Pakal's lid is unique in the entire archaeological record of Maya funerary art. A unique object requires a unique explanation. Here's what the Maya texts themselves recorded. The Popol Vuh, the Kach Maya creation account, preserved in a source document, transcribed by Friar Francisco Ximenes in the early 18th century, describes the original universe creators as beings called Heart of Sky and Heart of Earth, who arrived in darkness and created humanity in 3 attempts. Before they finalized the design, the creators deliberated on a problem. The new humans could see as far as the gods, so they blew mist into the humans' eyes to limit their sight deliberately. A civilization with advanced vision built a restriction into the beings it created, and it recorded the decision in writing. The Dresden Codex, one of 4 surviving Maya books, held in Dresden, Germany, contains a Venus table covering 65 complete Venus cycles across 104 solar years. The Maya base figure for one Venus cycle is 584 days. The modern figure is 583.92 days. Over one full cycle, the Maya are less than 2 hours off. This precision requires continuous observation across multiple human lifetimes, combined with a mathematical correction system the codex includes. Observation gives you the raw cycle. Something else provides the correction formula. The god Kukulkan is described in Maya texts as arriving from the direction of the rising sun in an era before the current creation, carrying knowledge. The calendar, the astronomical framework, and the base 20 mathematics that gave the Maya their computational precision. He taught, then departed with a promise to return. The same figure appears in Toltec tradition as Quetzalcoatl, in Aztec tradition under the same name, and in Andean tradition as Viracocha. Across 4 separate cultures on 2 continents, the same teacher arrives from above, transmits civilization's foundations, and departs. Kukulkan matches the Dogons Namo and the Anunnaki of Sumar. A being from outside, arriving physically, teaching specifically, departing with intent. 3 civilizations on 3 continents. The same function described with the same elements. The long count calendar extends 1.872 million days from a fixed origin point. It encodes the 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes and the Venus cycle accurate to 14 seconds per year. Observation gives you cycles. Something else gives you a calendar spanning 1.872 million days without recalibration. The Maya books the Spanish burned at Mani, Yucatan, in 1562, numbered in the hundreds. 4 survived. The ash settled and did not come back. Who taught the Maya a Venus cycle accurate to 14 seconds per year? What is the man on the Palenque lid operating? Who is Kukulkan, and why does the same figure appear independently on 2 continents in cultures that never met? What was in the books that burned in 1562? And why did the creators specifically limit what the humans they made were allowed to see? The 4 surviving books are in European museums. The ash from the rest settled over Mani 500 years ago. From Mexico, we go east across 2 oceans to the oldest body of literature on Earth texts describing nuclear weapons, flying machines, and gods who arrived from other star systems before the concept of a star system had a name. Number 4. The Vedic civilization of ancient India. You're on the Kurukshetra plain in what is now Haryana, northern India, in approximately 3100 BCE. The battle that ended lasted 18 days. In its final hours, a weapon was deployed. The Mahabharata describes it in clinical terms. A single projectile brighter than 10,000 suns, releasing a column of fire and smoke into the sky. In the immediate vicinity, every living thing burns. Further out, the dead are unburned but unrecognizable. In the weeks that follow, survivors experience hair falling out, nails separating, food becoming inedible, water turning foul, bleeding that does not stop. The text recommends abandoning the contaminated region entirely and not returning for years. This is the Brahmastra. It is described with the specificity of a weapons manual. Here's what makes modern physicians uncomfortable when they read this description. Hair loss following radiation exposure was first documented clinically after Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The sequence blinding flash, shockwave, intense heat, followed by hair loss, uncontrolled bleeding, digestive failure, and death over weeks, is the textbook clinical profile of acute radiation syndrome after nuclear detonation. The United States Army Medical Corps documented this profile in classified reports from September 1945. The Mahabharata's description matches it point for point. Internal astronomical configurations in the text place the events at approximately 3100 BCE. Acute radiation syndrome was not a medical concept on Earth until 1945. The Vaimanika Shastra is a Sanskrit text describing aerial vehicles called vimanas, transmitted through the sage Bharadvaja. It provides construction specifications for 4 types of aircraft. 16 metal alloys with specific properties, propulsion systems, navigation instruments, camouflage systems, and high-altitude flight protocols. In 1974, the Aeronautical and Mechanical Engineering Department of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore authors H. S. Mukunda, S. M. Deshpande, and H. R. Nagendra conducted a technical analysis of the designs. Several vehicles were found aerodynamically plausible. The propulsion systems referenced energy sources outside any known engineering framework. The Rig Veda dated by linguistic analysis to at least 1500 BCE, with internal astronomical markers researcher Bal Gangadhar Tilak argued in 1903 place certain passages. As early as 4000 BCE describes twin deities called the Ashvins who travel in a triangular flying vehicle, circle the earth in a single day, and perform eye restoration, limb replacement, and organ grafting. The Sanskrit terms used for these procedures translate most naturally as surgery, prosthetics, and transplantation. The Ashvins are physical beings with physical vehicles who land, treat patients, and depart. The distinction between divine being and technologically advanced visitor from elsewhere in the Rigveda is entirely a product of translation choice. The Surya Siddhanta, attributed to divine transmission and first written down around 400 CE, calculates the Earth's diameter at 7,840 miles. The modern figure is 7,926 miles. The error is 1.06%. It also describes the Earth rotating around the Sun, a heliocentric model that predates Copernicus's 1543 CE publication by more than a millennium. The Vedic cosmological time units describe cycles measured in billions of years. 1 kalpa equals 4.32 billion years. The current scientific age of the Earth is 4.543 billion years. 1 day and night of Brahma equals 8.64 billion years within the range of the Sun's estimated total lifespan of approximately 10 billion years. This is not poetry approximating cosmic scale. This is accurate astrophysical data embedded in a religious framework. The Devas, the beings of the Vedic sky, have bodies, vehicles, weapons, and political histories. They come from Svarga. They leave. They return. By every metric in the texts, they are beings from somewhere else who arrived, intervened, and departed. The Rigveda is still chanted today by priests who have maintained continuous oral transmission for at least 3,500 years. The chant contains a description of beings who arrived in triangular craft and performed surgery before writing existed. Whatever the first chanters witnessed, they considered it worth 3,500 years of memorization to preserve exactly. What detonated on the Kurukshetra plain with clinical symptoms matching a nuclear weapon 5,000 years before nuclear physics? Who designed the Vimanas? How did the Surya Siddhanta calculate Earth's diameter to within 1% without modern instruments? Who were the Devas, and where did they come from? The chant continues unbroken. The answer is inside it. We are still learning to read what they remembered. From the texts of India, we cross to the oldest witnessed sky in human history, 65,000 years of watching, painted on sandstone walls by the first people, who have been describing beings coming from above since before the Ice Age ended. Number 5. The Aboriginal Australians. You're inside a rock shelter in the Kimberley region of northwestern Australia. The date is unknowable. From the inside, the rock has absorbed too many years. Uranium-thorium dating of mineral crust overlying the paintings places the artwork at a minimum of 17,000 years old. From before the last glacial maximum, when Australia's coastline extended across now submerged continental shelves. The figure in front of you is 6 feet tall, painted in white and red ochre. It has no mouth. Its head is surrounded by a large oval of white circular, smooth, like a halo that is also a structure. Its eyes are wide, dark, and circular. Its body is covered from neck to foot in a continuous suit. The arms hang at its sides. It is not an animal. It is not a human, as any artist would draw a human. It has been here for 17,000 years, and it is wearing something. The Dogon described the Namo arriving from the Sirius system in a vessel of wind and fire. The Anunnaki of Sumar descended from heaven and transmitted civilization on tablets before the flood. The Mayas Kukulkan arrived from the sky and departed with a promise to return. The Aboriginal Australians painted the same class of being on sandstone walls 17,000 years before any of those civilizations existed. In every account, an entity from outside arrives, transmits knowledge, and departs. The Wandjina are part of that record. Here's what the 65,000-year number means. A 2011 study in science by Rasmussen and colleagues at the University of Copenhagen and the Max Planck Institute analyzed ancient DNA from an Aboriginal Australian hair sample donated in 1923. The results placed the divergence between the Aboriginal Australian ancestral population and all other modern human populations at approximately 72,000 years ago. Aboriginal Australians are the direct genetic descendants of the first anatomically modern humans to leave Africa, and they have maintained unbroken genetic and cultural continuity since. Göbekli Tepe was constructed 11,600 years ago. Aboriginal Australians have been maintaining their astronomical traditions for 65,000 years before that. The beings on the Kimberley walls are called Wandjina. They appear at over 600 documented sites across northwestern Australia. The oral tradition describes them as creator beings who came from the sky and the sea, formed the landscape and the first people, then ascended. They have no mouths because their power was so great that if they could speak, they would destroy the world. The halos surrounding their heads are described as both clouds and sources of light. Eric von Daniken and subsequent researchers compared the Wandjina visually to figures in pressure suits and helmets. Kimberley elders confirmed this description was consistent with how the Wandjina are understood in oral tradition. Beings who came prepared for arrival. The Dogon used the same functional terms for the Namo. The Hopi use them for the Kachinas. The Book of Enoch uses them for the Watchers. A suit, protection, a specific arrival, specific knowledge, a specific departure. The descriptions are not metaphorically similar. They are functionally identical. The Yolngu people of Arnhem Land maintain a star tradition that is technical, not poetic. They track the Pleiades called Ulungur and know the cluster contains more stars than the 6 typically visible. Researcher Dwayne Hamaker of the University of Melbourne confirmed that Yolngu astronomical knowledge constitutes functioning calendrical technology. The tradition describes beings from the Pleiades who visited the Earth, taught the ancestors, and returned. The Yolngu's name for the Pleiades is also their name for those beings. The star and the visitor share one word. The songlines are navigation networks crossing the Australian continent, encoding geographic, ecological, and astronomical information in oral song transmitted for tens of thousands of years. Hamoker confirmed that specific song lines correspond to stellar sight lines paths from sacred site to sacred site aligned with the rising of specific stars. At Milbrodale in New South Wales, a rock carving estimated at a minimum of 3,800 years old shows the creator Bayame with arms spread, surrounded by smaller human figures. His feet point downward, not upward, downward, as if he has just arrived. The people who made it were not describing a story. They were recording a landing. Who are the Wangina, and why do their images share specific visual details with pressure suits and helmets? How did the Yolngu embed stellar sight lines into the physical landscape tens of thousands of years before any other navigation system existed? Why has the oldest continuous culture on Earth described creators coming from the sky for 65,000 years without interruption? And what arrived at Milbrodale that the people there needed 3,800 years of rock to remember? The Pleiades still rise from the same horizon. The Yolngu still call them by the same name. From Australia's ancient cliff art, we follow the sky beings to a canyon in New Mexico, where a civilization built a city-sized astronomical instrument, received instructions from beings they identified as coming from the Pleiades, and then followed those instructions and vanished, leaving the building sealed, the instrument still running, and not a single body behind. Number 6. The Anasazi of Chaco Canyon. You're in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, at 5,500 feet elevation, in approximately 850 CEE. The building going up to your left, Pueblo Bonito, is already 5 stories tall, arranged in a precise D shape, aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of 0.3 degrees. It will eventually hold 800 rooms. The masonry is core and veneer construction. A rubble and mud inner core surrounded by precisely fitted shaped sandstone laid in alternating courses that distribute structural load evenly. Structural engineers who have analyzed this method describe it as seismically resistant. There is no construction tradition in the American Southwest that leads up to this. Pueblo Bonito begins, and it is already correct. Chaco Canyon is the center of a network covering more than 400 square miles. At least 75 outlier communities are connected to the canyon by roads that extend to the horizon in perfectly straight lines, regardless of terrain crossing arroyos, climbing cliffs, descending mesas without curving. Archaeologist John Roney, publishing his road survey findings in 1992, confirmed the roads are formal construction. 30 feet wide, cleared to bare soil, bordered with low masonry walls. Where a road encounters a cliff face, it does not redirect. It installs carved hand and toe-hold staircases and continues on the other side in the same compass direction. The road's straight-line geometry serves no purpose for foot traffic navigating terrain. It serves a clear purpose for something observing from above. Here's what makes engineers uncomfortable about this canyon. In 1977, researcher Anna Sofair discovered a spiral petroglyph on Fajata Butte that functions as a solar and lunar calendar. At the summer solstice, a dagger of light crosses the spiral center. At the winter solstice, 2 daggers bracket its edges. At the equinoxes, a single dagger bisects the spiral asymmetrically. The spiral also marks the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle period, after which the moon's rising point on the horizon returns to the same position. Tracking this cycle requires generational memory and institutional records. The Anasazi built it into the landscape so it could be read without those records by anyone who knew to look. It is a message designed to remain legible, regardless of whether the people who made it survived. The canyon's great houses, mapped from above, encode the solar year, the lunar standstill cycle, and the positions of multiple constellations in their spatial relationships. Researcher Kim Malville of the University of Colorado, publishing in Archaeoastronomy in 1993, confirmed the inter-site alignments across the Chaco network are deliberate astronomical relationships. The canyon is not a settlement, it is an instrument. Every building is a calibrated component. The Hopi oral tradition names Chaco as a place where the Kachinas beings from the Pleiades lived among the ancestors, teaching what needed to be taught. Elder Oswald White Bear Fredericks described them as arriving in flying shields and departing the same way. These are the same class of beings the Aboriginal Australians call the Wangina, the Dogon call the Namo, and the Book of Enoch calls the Watchers. They arrived, they taught, they departed. At approximately 1150 CE, Chaco Canyon was abandoned. Tree ring dating confirms no new building after this date. No evidence of warfare or epidemic. At Pueblo Bonito, sealed rooms contain turquoise caches, carved shell ornaments, and wooden prayer sticks. A formal closing. The Maya's books were burned at Mani in 1562 CE, and the knowledge inside them died with the smoke. The Olmecs closed every major site around 400 BCE, heads buried, monuments defaced, and left no successor. The Anasazi sealed their rooms and followed instructions that no outsider recorded. Civilizations that carry this knowledge protect it from whoever comes after, or they are told to leave before whoever is coming arrives. In 1979, astronomer John Brandt and archaeologist Ray Williamson documented a petroglyph at Penasco Blanco showing a hand, a crescent moon, and a starburst corresponding to the 1054 CE supernova that created the Crab Nebula. The Anasazi recorded the birth of a star in real time on a canyon wall. They were watching the sky carefully enough to document a stellar event and preserve it in stone for whoever came next. The sun dagger spiral on Fajata Butte catches the solstice light on schedule, twice a year, every year. No one in the canyon is there to see it. The calendar still works. The people who built it followed the instructions and left. Who designed a road network running straight for 60 miles regardless of terrain, with geometry meaningful only from above. Why do the great houses encode the solar year and the lunar standstill with 0.3-degree precision? Who are the Kachinas the Hopi say lived here, and where did they go? And what were the instructions that told tens of thousands of people to seal their buildings in ceremony and vanish without leaving a grave? From New Mexico's abandoned Star City, we go south to the Gulf Coast of Mexico, where the mother culture of every Mesoamerican civilization appeared fully formed, transported 40-ton boulders 60 miles without draft animals, and built to a magnetic pole no compass they possessed could have found. Number 7. The Ancient Olmecs. You're at the La Venta archaeological site on the Gulf Coast of Mexico in 1940. Smithsonian archaeologist Matthew Sterling and photographer Richard Stewart have just uncovered a stone head emerging from the jungle floor. It is 9 feet tall, weighs approximately 24 tons, and is carved from a single basalt boulder. The nearest source of that basalt is the Tuxtla Mountains 60 miles away. No roads connect them. No draft animals capable of moving 24 tons existed in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The head has been here for approximately 2,500 years. It has a face. And the face is not Mesoamerican. There are 17 confirmed Olmec colossal heads, distributed across 4 major sites along the Gulf Coast. The largest stands 11 feet tall and weighs over 40 tons. Each was carved from a single basalt boulder quarried from mountains 60 to 90 miles away. No construction evidence has been found at any transport route between the quarry sites and the carving locations. The Olmec left no record of how this was done. What they left are faces with broad flat noses, thick lips, and facial structures that no indigenous Mesoamerican population possessed, and that physical anthropologists have consistently documented as anomalous in their geographic and temporal context. Here's what makes archaeologists uncomfortable about the Olmec timeline. The Olmec civilization appears in the Gulf Coast record at approximately 1500 BCE, fully formed, as the oldest complex civilization in the Americas. Before them, the regional archaeological record shows no urban centers, no long-distance trade networks, no monumental architecture, no ritual calendar. The Maya, the Aztec, the Toltec, the Zapotec, every subsequent Mesoamerican civilization traces its foundational elements to the Olmec. Writing, the zero, the long count calendar, the ritual ball game. The Olmec have no origin. They begin at the level they will maintain. Where every other known civilization on Earth develops gradually, the Olmecs simply appear. The La Venta Pyramid Complex, the Olmecs' primary ceremonial center, is built on a precise north-south axis, oriented 8 degrees west of true north. This is not a construction error. Archaeological surveys confirm the complex aligns to magnetic north as it existed at La Venta's construction date of approximately 900 BCE. The Olmec built to a moving target the magnetic pole with precision that implies either an instrument for detecting magnetic north at a date 1,000 years before China's first documented compass, or guidance from something that already knew where the pole was. Whatever aligned La Venta did so with tools the Olmec are not supposed to have possessed. There were jaguar figures that appear throughout Olmec iconography, half-human, half-jaguar hybrid beings with cleft skulls and downturned mouths are not decorative. The Olmec creation account, reconstructed from later Mesoamerican versions that cite the Olmec as the source, describes the ancestors as offspring of a jaguar being from the sky, who paired with a human to produce a divine lineage. The Olmec rulers were not humans worshipping a god from a distance. They were the descendants of that pairing. They claimed literal descent from a being that was not fully human and did not originate on Earth. Around 400 BCE, every major Olmec site was systematically closed. Colossal heads were buried. Monuments were deliberately defaced. The ceremonial cores were sealed under fill, not by invaders, and not by environmental collapse. No warfare is documented in the archaeological record at the closing sites. No epidemic. The Olmec sites were not abandoned. They were closed by the same people who built them, in a structured process that mirrors what the builders of Göbekli Tepe 9,000 years earlier did in Turkey. Build an impossible complex, then seal it under organized fill and leave. The pattern belongs to civilizations that received instructions from the same source and followed those instructions when the time came to stop. Who built the colossal heads, transported 40-ton basalt boulders 60 miles without draft animals, and carved faces belonging to no known regional population? Why does the oldest complex civilization in the Americas appear fully formed with no developmental period? What aligned La Venta to the magnetic north of 900 BCE with compass-level precision, using an instrument the civilization is not supposed to have had? Who are the jaguar beings the Olmec rulers claimed as ancestors? And what told the Olmec to close their sites in 400 BCE, bury the heads, and leave without leaving a successor? The heads are still in the jungle. The faces are still facing outward. No institution has yet offered an explanation that accounts for all of them simultaneously. From the Gulf Coast monuments of the Olmecs, the mother culture of every Mesoamerican civilization that followed, we crossed the Andes to the cloud forests of northern Peru, where a people who said they came from above built walls 3 times the volume of the Great Pyramid and placed their dead at 200 feet on vertical cliffs without leaving any trace of how they got there. Number 8. The Chachapoya, the Cloud People of Peru. You're in the Amazonas region of northern Peru in 1996. Peruvian archaeologist Federico Kaufmann-Doig and his team have climbed to 10,800 feet above sea level, into the cloud forest that gives this people their name. In a cliff face above the Laguna de los Condors, they pull back vines and reveal an entrance sealed for centuries. Inside, arranged on a ledge above the water, are 219 mummified individuals seated in funerary bundles. Where hair has survived the centuries, it is light-colored. The facial structure of the skulls is unlike the indigenous Andean populations in the valleys below. Spanish colonial chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon, writing in 1553 after traveling through the region, described the Chachapoya as the whitest and most handsome of all the people I have seen in the Indies. He was describing a population in the Peruvian cloud forest. The Chachapoya occupied the cloud forests of northern Peru from approximately 900 CE until the Inca conquest in 1475. They never fully submitted to Inca rule. When Francisco Pizarro arrived in 1532, they provided warriors to fight alongside the Spanish against their Inca overlords. When Spanish chroniclers asked the Chachapoya leaders why they were allying with unknown strangers against the dominant regional power, the leaders gave an answer the chroniclers recorded without fully understanding. They were waiting for the people from the sky to return. Here's what makes geneticists uncomfortable about the Chachapoya. A 2013 study published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology by researchers from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig analyzed mitochondrial DNA from skeletal remains collected across multiple Chachapoya sites. The haplogroup distribution was anomalous. Several samples showed mitochondrial lineages rare in Native American populations, but common in Western and Northern Europe, and in some cases corresponding to Near Eastern lineages. No contamination was demonstrated. No follow-up study has been funded by any major archaeological institution. The results were published in 2013. Nothing has moved since. The data exists. The funding to pursue it does not. Quaylap is the structure at the center of Chachapoya identity. Built between 9,1100 and 1100 CE on a ridge at 9,840 feet above sea level. Its outer wall stands 62 feet high and 1,800 feet long, constructed from limestone blocks fitted without mortar. The total stone volume in the Quaylap walls exceeds 3 times the volume of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Archaeological surveys found no evidence of construction camps, quarrying staging areas, or any architectural tradition in the surrounding region that could have produced Kwelap's engineering. Kwelap was built by people who already knew how to build Kwelap. The tradition that explains where the knowledge originated is the one that says it came from above. The Purin-Makis, the cliff-face sarcophagi the Chachapoya built for their dead, are each carved to resemble a standing human figure and positioned on narrow ledges cut into near vertical cliff faces at heights of up to 200 feet. The mummies inside are seated upright, dressed in full regalia. No construction scaffolding has been found at any Purin-Makis site. No rope anchors, no tool caches, no evidence of rigging at 200 feet. The Chachapoya built their dead into positions accessible only by someone already at 200 feet on a vertical cliff face, then removed every trace of how they got there. The Chachapoya origin mythology describes the ancestors as descending from Apu Khan, Tisai Viracocha, and from sky-dwelling beings associated with the sun and the high peaks. Viracocha is the same figure the Maya call Kukulkan and the Aztec call Quetzalcoatl, a teacher arriving from outside, transmitting civilization's foundations, and departing with a promise to return. The Chachapoya are not simply worshippers of Viracocha. Their origin narrative places their lineage directly inside that tradition as descendants of the civilization that sent him. The Chachapoya name for themselves translates from Quechua as people of the clouds. Their creation narrative places their origin above the clouds. They said they came from above. They said the beings who brought them would come back. What explains the anomalous mitochondrial haplogroups in the 2013 Max Planck study? How was Kwelap constructed with 3 times the stone volume of the Great Pyramid in a region with no documented construction precursor? Who placed the dead at 200 feet on vertical cliffs without leaving any trace of access? What did the Chachapoya leaders know about people from the sky that made them ready to fight the most powerful empire in the Americas? And when they said the sky people were coming back, who exactly were they expecting? The Purin-Makis face outward from their ledges, over the cloud forest, toward the horizon. They have been waiting for a very long time. From the cloud forests of Peru, we make our last journey to the most isolated inhabited place on Earth, a volcanic island in the middle of the Pacific, where a people built 1,000 stone figures all watching the sky, and left behind a script no living human being can read. Number 9. Rapanui. You're at the Rano Raraku quarry on Easter Island in 1955. Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl is conducting the first systematic archaeological excavation of the island's moai. The figures visible above ground are heads massive, long-faced, impassive stone faces emerging from the hillside. As Heyerdahl's team excavates below the surface, the heads become complete figures. They have torsos, extending 20 to 30 feet underground. Their buried bodies are covered in carved symbols, crescents, circles, geometric patterns in repeating rows. These are not unfinished statues buried by rockfall. They are complete figures placed so that only their heads project above ground level, their bodies underground, carved with inscriptions that no one on the surface has ever seen, pointed upward into the earth. There are 1,000 known moai on Easter Island. The average moai weighs 14 tons. The largest standing figure, Pero, weighed 82 tons and stood 33 feet tall. No wheeled vehicles, no large draft animals, no iron tools. Researchers Carl Leppo and Terry Hunt demonstrated in a 2012 paper in the Journal of Archaeological POC. Science that moai can be walked upright using ropes, a technique that works for figures under 10 tons on flat ground. Pero weighs 82 tons. No walking method has been demonstrated at that weight, and no method accounts for 1,000 statues transported across 30 miles of volcanic terrain. Here's what the Ahu platforms were built to do. Researcher William Mulloy documented in 1974 that Easter Island's Ahu have astronomical orientations. A 2019 study by Dwayne Hamaker and colleagues confirmed that 22 of the island's Ahu have statistically significant alignments to solar events, specifically the December solstice sunset. The moai stand on these platforms facing inland. Their backs face the sea. The compass direction their backs face corresponds, in each case, to the constellation the island's oral tradition identifies as the original homeland of the long years the founding caste of Easter Island's earliest known population. The moai are positioned deliberately between the interior of the island and the direction from which the founding people arrived. The Rongorongo script appears on 26 surviving wooden tablets distributed across museum collections in Rome, Leningrad, Washington, and Santiago. The script contains approximately 14,000 individual glyphs. Every person on Easter Island who could read Rongorongo was dead or enslaved by 1863, when Peruvian slave raiders carried off approximately 1,500 islanders, including the entire chiefly and priestly class. In 2023, researchers from Brown University and Harvard using advanced language models attempted computational decipherment. The analysis identified repetition consistent with astronomical tables. Not one glyph has been definitively translated. It is the only independent writing system humanity has lost completely. The oral tradition of Easter Island, documented by missionaries and ethnographers in the 1860s, describes the original settlement by a chief named Hatu Matoa, who arrived by sea from a land called Hiva that had sunk beneath the ocean. Arriving separately and before Hatu Matoa were the Long Ears, a founding population described as coming not by sea, but by following the Pleiades from their place of origin. The Hopi say their teachers, the Kachinas, came from the Pleiades. The Yolngu of Australia say their sky beings came from the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades. The Rapanui Long Ears say they followed the Pleiades here. Three cultures separated by thousands of miles of ocean, pointing to one origin point. The Birdman ceremony at the Orongo ritual village was performed annually until the 1860s. Warriors swam to the islet of Matu Nui to retrieve the first egg of the sooty tern, arriving from across the open Pacific. The timing of the tern's arrival correlates with the rising of the Pleiades above the eastern horizon. The winner became the island's sacred birdman for the following year, believed to embody the presence of those original beings. The ceremony has never fully stopped. The birds still arrive from the same direction every year. In 1978, researcher Sergio Rapu Hawa restored the white coral and black obsidian eyes to a moai for the first time since they had been lost to erosion. The eyes, when in place, angle slightly upward, not at the horizon, not at the people who stand below, at the sky. They have never been looking at us. They have been looking at the place the Long Ears came from. How were 82-ton statues transported across 30 miles of volcanic terrain without draft animals or wheels? Why is Rongorongo, the only independently invented writing system in human history, never deciphered? Why do the Long Ears, the Hopi Kachinas, and the Yolngu sky beings all trace their origin to the same star cluster? And what do the carved inscriptions on the buried bodies actually say? The eyes are white coral and black obsidian. They have not stopped looking. From the most isolated island on Earth, we close on the banks of the Nile, where a civilization that built the most precise structure in human history also carved in the oldest religious text ever discovered the exact stellar address to which the beings who established their civilization returned. Number 10. The Old Kingdom Egyptians. You're in the burial chamber of the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, Egypt, in 1880. French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero has broken into the smallest Old Kingdom pyramid at Saqqara and found, inscribed floor-to-ceiling in hieroglyphs, the oldest religious text ever discovered. The Pyramid Texts, dated to approximately 2375 BCE, carved on the interior walls of 5 royal burial chambers. They are not prayers. They are not mythology. They are instructions, sequential directions for the dead pharaoh to ascend from the burial chamber, navigate the night sky, and board the solar bark of Ra. The texts assume the pharaoh knows exactly where he is going, because his family has been going there for generations. The Juat, translated in most Egyptology textbooks as the underworld, is described in the pyramid texts as a stellar region. Its specific location is fixed, the belt of Orion and the star Sirius. These are not metaphors for death. They are coordinates. You will go up to the sky, the texts state, you will cross the firmament. Robert Bovell demonstrated that the 3 pyramids at Giza correspond geometrically to the 3 stars of Orion's belt at their alignment, positioned in the precession of approximately 10,500 BCE, not 2,500 BCE, not 2,500 BCE, when the pyramids were built. The Giza complex is not a map of the sky as it appeared when it was built. It is a map of the sky as it appeared when the people who built it arrived. Here's what makes Egyptologists uncomfortable. The 4 non-functional shafts inside the Great Pyramid point, in their 2500 BCE positions at 4 specific stars: Alpha Draconis, Thuban, Orion's belt, and Sirius. They are not ventilation shafts, the chambers are sealed, and the shafts are too narrow to move air. They are pointing devices. The pyramid is a stone compass oriented at 4 stellar addresses simultaneously. Kate Spence, publishing in Nature in 2000, confirmed that the Great Pyramid's north-south alignment was achieved using simultaneous observation of 2 precessing stars, requiring data tracking precise enough to identify the single night when those 2 stars formed a perfect plumb line. This is precision engineering using stellar data as the primary reference system. The Zep Tepi, the Egyptian, first time, is described in temple texts at Edfu, Dendera, and Karnak as the period when beings called the Companions of Horus arrived after a cataclysm, rebuilt civilization from ruins, and transmitted the knowledge later encoded in the pyramid complexes. The Edfu building texts were carved in the Ptolemaic era from originals the scribes attribute to the Old Kingdom. The Old Kingdom attributes them to Zep Tepi. Placed astronomically, Zep Tepi corresponds to approximately 10,500 BCE, the end of the last ice age, aligned with the same epoch Robert Bovell identified in the Giza precession map. The first time is not a myth. The Egyptians describe it as a historical event, with witnesses. Imhotep, architect of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, first named architect in history, appears in the historical record with no apprenticeship, no developmental period, and no documented teachers. His Step Pyramid, built around 2650 BCE, is the first large-scale stone construction in human history, and it is immediately correct. A 6-level structure of stacked mastabas over a subterranean complex. He was not discovering these things. He already knew them. The pharaoh in the Old Kingdom is not a man who rules by divine right. He is a physical descendant of Ra, a celestial being who descended at Zep Tepi, established the first civilization, and returned to the sky. The pharaoh is not worshipping a god. He is the heir of one. And the pyramid texts give him, at death, the address to which to return. The Dogon Namo came from Sirius. The Anunnaki of Sumar descended from heaven. The Wurjagwai rulers of the Olmecs claimed descent from a non-human being from the sky. The Chachapoya descended from Viracocha, the same teacher the Maya call Kukulkan. The Vedic Devis arrived from Svarga. The Hopi Kachinas and the Rapanui Long Ears both followed the Pleiades to Earth. The Wangina of the Aboriginal Australians descended from the sky. The Anasazi received Kachina teachers who came and went in flying shields. Ra descended at Zep Tepi, established everything the pharaohs would maintain for 3,000 years, and the pyramid texts preserve his forwarding address. 10 civilizations. 6 continents. 10 languages. 1 account. This is not mythological convergence. This is a record, told by 10 peoples who were present, in 10 languages, across 65,000 years of unbroken tradition, pointing at the same question. What arrived at the beginning of civilization, and where did it go? Something arrived. It taught what it knew. It left instructions in stone, in clay, in song, and in the chambers of pyramids still standing today. The oldest peoples on Earth have been pointing at the sky ever since, waiting for it to come back. Subscribe so you don't miss what we cover next. Like if you think the official history of this planet has more gaps than any textbook will admit. And drop a comment right now. Where in the world are you watching from?